Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Fallen London. Today we're going to be having a look at September's exceptional story, A Columbidaean Commotion. But before we start, as always, I encourage you to play these for yourselves, spoilers ahead, support Failbetter, become an exceptional friend, get access to these stories and 2 candles and various other benefits, and if you want to support me, there's a coffee link somewhere. But without further ado, let's start. There's pandemonium on a nearby rooftop. A scuttle of urchins tear after a black and white blur. A tiny, winged form dives past the edge, bombing towards the earth. There's a blast of air above you and there's something on your head. Too much to hope this is the work of a gorilla haberdasher. You had better investigate. You reach up to find something feathery. There is a discontented coo and a baffle of wings as something relocates to your shoulder. You find yourself face to face with a black and white pigeon. A canny urchin calls over to you. "Boy, get your own dinner." They monkey down the drainpipes in frantic pursuit. Pigeons are a rare sight in London. In many ways, the city's fall was theirs too. This one is panting from its frantic flight and tucks closer in to you as the urchins approach. So we have 3 options. We can either detain the bird. What might the urchins offer for such a delicacy as pigeon? We can shoo the pigeon away. It'd be better for the bird and your outfit if you went your separate ways. Or we can accommodate the pigeon. Protect the pigeon from the urchin's culinary ambitions. Let's accommodate the pigeon. You slip the bird into your pocket, from which it coos happily. The urchins are not so delighted. "We've been chasing it for ages." But it appears the bird has bested them. "Wish I could pull a trick like that when the constables are after me." You remark that strangers' pockets usually constitute the start, not the end, of such a chase. The urchins laugh and slope off. Your pocket pigeon exposes its head long enough to pass you a feather, intricately inked by a delicate hand. How you treat the pigeons will determine what choices are available to you at the end of the story. Exploring different approaches will broaden rather than limit your choices. So now we have a lost pigeon in our pocket. Your pocket now grunts when you poke it. You can no longer keep fungal crackers about your person. Cats watch you greedily, and that is the matter of the leavings. If this goes on much longer, you risk acquiring both a reputation and an odour. Whether you enjoy the fluffy warmth or not, this relationship isn't sustainable. Let's examine that feather. Someone has inscribed delicate ink markings onto the bird's feathers. Perhaps you can use them to locate its home. The feather is not unique. All the flight feathers on your passenger have been marked with tiny, delicate pen strokes. Fanned out, you can read an address across the span of the wing. Chester, 459. If caught, report this number to an address in Ladybones Road. Chester perks up as you draw closer to your destination. He clearly knows the way, even if he's opted to let you make the journey for him. A smashed dovecot dominates the roof. A handful of pigeons cluster inside, sadly contemplating the remains of their home. Before the cot stands a clayman. His head and shoulders are streaked with droppings. He grows agitated as he sees you assessing the wreckage. "I did not do this." Half a dozen of the birds flock to land on him, and he calms a little. "Well, let's extricate Chester from my pocket. Despite the damage, it seems that this is his home." The clayman reflexively extends a hand, on which Chester lands and performs a happy little spin. I was so worried, he tells the bird, in as much of a whisper as a clay man can manage. Chester casts one last look back at you before proceeding into the wrecked dovecote. The pigeons gather there, possibly mourning their damaged home, possibly searching for crumbs. It's hard to tell with pigeons. I am trying, but they cannot continue like this. Claymen have perennially steady expressions, but the fancier's eyes are practically begging you for help. The Unremarkable Fancier has been doing his level best to care for London's imperiled pigeon population. Once they were everywhere. Then the fall, where the bulk of pigeons fell victim to culinary misadventure. They were your companions, and you turned on them. The fancier says he has a plan to help them, but first, he wants to find his wayward birds. How did the loft come to be smashed? Did the fancier see who did this? The fancier didn't see the culprits. He becomes agitated once more as he recounts this, fearing blame. Many Londoners would draw misguided conclusions from a clay man standing before such a wreckage. Something about the damage seems purposeful, not born of rage or frustration or transgression, but to achieve an effect. To intimidate the fancier, or perhaps harm the birds. Though, having cracked open their loft, it would have been easy to pluck them from their nests. And yet the fancier says none were hurt. Well, we have to agree to help, don't we? The birds appear unharmed, but several are missing. Helping the fancier recover them will help the birds and earn his favour. This will advance the story. His relief is palpable. Thank you. He passes you a list, written in the same tiny, delicate script that marked the feather. Saxon spot, Jacobin, none. Pigeon. This leaves you on the trail of 3 peculiar birds, some of the last fancy pigeons in London. We appear to have a few options here. A penchant for pigeons. Most of the fancier's pigeony stock were rock doves, the mainstay bird of cities everywhere. But cities have always played host to a smattering of fancy pigeons, mislaid from one collection or another. The rock doves can take care of themselves, but not all these birds share their survival instincts. So we appear to have a few strange options here. Do we just start at the top and see what happens? Check the cook pots in the flit. You've already discovered the urchin's prandial predilection for the pigeon. Fancier rumbles unhappily. After the fall, pigeons were a ready source of meat in those dark times before Londoners had made sufficient advances in the field of fungal gastronomy. You had better walk a little faster. The wide-eyed urchin is trying to pretend she has nothing in her pot. But there sits the Saxon spot, a fine specimen with muffled feet and its signature head spot. It appears to be having a bath in the still, cold water. Well, we better retrieve the bird. The urchin hasn't scrounged up enough fuel to cook with, but she might not want to part with her prize. You scoop the pigeon from the pot and fix the urchin with a steely glare. She puts up the customary resistance of urchin kind, her foul language landing truer than her pebbles, but her heart clearly isn't in it. You'd suspect she'd come to like the bird. Well, we saved the Saxon spot. That was relatively easy, wasn't it? We can scour the nearby buildings. the fancier's birds may have taken refuge in a nearby facade. Pigeons once lived on cliffs before humans brought them into their cities. The stony faces of buildings are our unwitting gift to them. You search high and low, but mostly high, until you spot something curious up on the rotunda of St. Fiacre's. When you tell the verger of St. Fiacre's that there's a nun stuck on the cathedral's roof, it causes rather a stir. He is less amused to discover that you in fact mean a pigeon of that breed, and not a sister of the cloth. He declines to give you access to the back staircase after that. You'll have to make your own way up. Well, it's time to climb the cathedral. If anyone catches you, you can claim it's an act of devotion. You find yourself clinging to a statue of Saint Fiacre himself. Unable to progress further, the nun finds you so pitiable a sight that she snaps out of her own terror and descends to you. She whispers that she came up here because she was trying to imagine what the sky was like, but all it did was remind her of what they've lost. Prolific and inescapable in London before the fall, here in the Neath, the pigeons are all but gone. And finally, let's search for Jacobin. The Jacobin is liberal with its affections. The fancier claims he once saw it courting a shoe. Chester's spotted a cowled bird courting in Vale Garden. Time to investigate. Over in Vale Garden, the cowled Jacobin, said to have once been the favoured breed of the Empress herself, perches on the arm of the presumptuous Pettifog. The woman's clothes are fashionable and expensive, but with just a whiff of scruffiness, like she wears them slightly too often and has had them darned too many times. The Pettifog smiles, and the bird inflates its crop and struts about in return. She slips it a cracker, asks it a question, and holds it to her ear for the answer. I suppose we should recover the Jacobin. The Pettifog's eyes portend mischief. He clearly sees some advantage here. And where is she now? The Pettifog's eyes sparkle with opportunity. You clear your throat, and the Jacobin deflates guiltily. As you pluck it from her arm, the Pettifog smiles at you. Remarkable creatures. I've had my eye on them for some time. There's so much they can do for me. Ah, us. And this one told me such entrancing tales. He watches you both intently as you go. It's time to locate the delightful dove. The fancier's final missing bird is prone to giving speeches down by the docks. Most unusual bird. What sort of pigeon is she? A lofty archangel? The venerated ice pigeon? Perhaps an ashen lacquer shield owl? She is simply herself. An avian firebrand? Oh no. The delightful dove is giving a speech on the roof of a warehouse near the waterfront. No words are exchanged. The elaborate series of coos and spins steadily whips the crowd of gathered pigeons into a fervour. The dove has a prop, an ash grey twig, heavy with green fruit. She brandishes it regularly, eliciting frantic sonoration from the gathered birds. We have a few options. We can inspect the twig. That twig is a most curious cultivar. What is the dove doing with it? Let's start with that. The lurid green fruit resemble obscene olives, big as prize emeralds. The dove plucks one of the fruit, and another buds and bulges grotesquely from the twig to replace it, regrowing right before your very eyes. This twig can bear fruit, having long been torn from its parent tree. The fruit itself grows impossibly fast. What sort of botanical wonder is this? Going to be parabola in it. It's always the parabola. Permit a cross-examination from your 7-throater warbler. We have this because we have a 7-throated warbler. There's a clearing of throats about your person. The 7-throated warbler has something to say. The warbler challenges her simultaneously on true status of the pigeon, the provenance of her remarkable twig, and her style of oratory. The other throats take various positions for, against, or both. The delightful dove engages earnestly at first. Her patience quickly wears thin, however, though she falls back on a technique from the very oldest school of rhetoric, walloping your opponent with a stick. Let's try to comprehend the speech. You don't speak pigeon yet, but you might still be able to glean something. A place to live in peace. Pigeons are remarkably expressive birds when one cares to pay them attention, and the dove is a skilled orator. They can speak English, though they rarely choose to. The dove speaks to them in their own cooing, trilling language. You grasp tone, if not substance. Promises are being made. Something better. The dove carries a lot of anger, and her speech infects much of the crowd with that same fervour. More than that, is it the anger that prefigures a departure? She wants to leave, and she wants them to leave with her. But to go where? Well, let's get the dove to come with me. The dove clearly needs no assistance, but the fancier needs hers. The dove pays you no mind until the fancier finally lumbers up to join you on the rooftop. Then she raises the twig one last time, and the crowd breaks in a flock of clapping wings. The dove settles on the fancier's shoulders. She sat there often enough to wear a slight depression. He unconsciously reaches up to tap her gently on the chest with a clay finger, and she crinkles her forehead feathers happily. I have a plan to make this city a place for pigeons once more. A society of pigeon lovers. The fancier fills you in while you walk. He's very anxious to be away from the docks. Is that where he's supposed to work? He's been keeping some of London's birds safe, and it's a difficult task for a solitary clayman. But once there was a society. They made pigeons popular, or something other than their meat. It was abandoned when the city fell, but it could be revived and turned to serve the pigeon. The dove scoffs and ruffles her feathers at the idea. Does he need me? If the unremarkable fancier thinks this society is the answer to the pigeon's plight, why hasn't he taken care of it himself? He's tried to revive the society statues from the offices of baseborn and fowling piece, but they would not permit me. The Historical Society has prestige and potentially dormant resources, and too many Londoners still regard claymen with suspicion. The dove grunts disapprovingly. Her kind knows well that being useful is not enough to earn respect. Let's get the dove's perspective. The dove clearly disapproves of this idea. The dove grunts. You get the sense that she is choosing her words carefully. Won't make a difference. The best thing is for us to leave. London isn't our home anymore. The fancier has grown even stiller than usual. But if... She cuts him off with another grunt and turns to face away. Well, I guess we shall agree to help. Reviving this society can improve the lot of the pigeon and bring the species back from the brink. Or perhaps it could become a vehicle for your own advancement. This will advance the story. You can return to the loft on Ladybones Road throughout the rest of the story to see how the pigeons feel about their future. The fancier presses his hand into yours. Thank you. He looks for more words, but he doesn't find them. Thank you. The dove ruffles her feathers. The future she sees is far from London, though she's stubbornly vague on where precisely that is. But she owes the fancier enough to stay and see this through. That makes your next destination the offices of Baseborn and Fowling Piece to see about dredging up the Society's statues. You can feed the fancier's pigeons to learn how they feel about their future. We can go and feed the pigeons. Let's go see the pigeons. Feathered friends. The fancier's loft in Ladybones Road plays host to some of London's few remaining pigeons. Let's feed the birds, offer the pigeons a few crumbs, and learn what the mutterings are among their kind. The Saxon spot is suspiciously damp, but isn't shy about perching on your arm while the gathered birds coo to one another. They're still nervous about London. One bird suggests they should just all leave. The response indicates the dove's vision is a compelling one, although it remains terrifyingly uncertain. Let's go to orchestrating a revival. The Unremarkable Fancier has told you of a defunct society of pigeon lovers, which may still exist, in dormant form. If you're to help him help pigeonkind, this society will be the perfect vehicle to get Londoners on board. Well, let's recover the Society's statutes. The first step is to get a copy of the institution's statutes to see what they require of you. I take it you're referring to the Philoperisteron Society. The clerk gives you a stern look. It's registered as dormant. For it to be recognised, and for its retained assets to be unlocked, you'll need a quotient meeting of registered members to elect a president. The clerk makes it abundantly clear that you are now responsible for the documents until a committee is elected. That, she says without congratulation, makes you acting secretary. So, you shall have to dredge up enough support to hold a meeting and vote in a president. You've been summarily appointed as acting secretary of the Philoperisteron Society. The society apparently has some meagre resources, safeguarded by Messrs. Baseborn and Fowling Piece, and a meeting hall. The address of the meeting hall proves oddly elusive. The Unremarkable Fancier leaves the fancy pigeons under Chester's watchful eye in order to scour the streets. That leaves you with one job: pigeon propaganda. Well, let's put a pigeon on show. The birds are quite remarkable when you see them in action. Be sure that London knows it. Your patter garners a modest crowd. It wasn't difficult to convince a dozen of the birds to wheel around the park at your signal. They swoop and circle, the rustling of their wings audible in the sudden silence. It's not quite the spectacle you were going for, but it awakens something in the crowd, showing them something they never knew they were missing. You spot one man wiping away a tear. Let's lure in prospective members with false advertising, just like a real committee. You just need bodies in a room and names on paper. You needn't actually care one whit about pigeons. You do the rounds in the flit, mentioning the upcoming meeting. You don't actually promise anyone a free meal, but you put the idea into their heads that there will be food on offer. Perhaps you'd better warn the birds to keep to the rafters during the meeting. And finally, let's give a public lecture on the virtues of the pigeon. If people knew more about the birds, they might come to love them. And we believe pigeons can perceive and trace magnetic fields. The audience nods appreciatively. In fact, the speculation on how the navigational abilities of the humble pigeon might function in the Neath. It has some heady implications. The audience claps in scholarly pleasure. You inform them that, should they wish to know more about the bird, they might join you at the upcoming meeting. Oh, and here we go, we can reclaim the Society's hall. The Philoperisteron Society once maintained a meeting hall. It's still on Society books. The meeting hall is in poor repair. It could seat a fair number, had someone not stolen all the seats long ago. The Unremarkable Fancier helps you clear the debris. The rafters, though, are beautiful. An intricate latticework of dark wood that could accommodate 100 birds. There's no evidence of any device to catch the pigeons. Emanations, however. The pigeons had better like what you had to say. We can receive the premuncious pettifog. He drops by the meeting hall in an oh-so-casual fashion. I hear there's a meeting concerning the... He makes a gesture, approximating the size of a bird. You have to supply her with the word pigeon. Yes, those. Those poor birds have had a tough time of it, and I've heard such remarkable things about that dove. Could you facilitate an introduction? I have a few well-placed friends who'd be very interested in what the... He flashes you a pleased grin. Pigeons have to say. I mean, do we listen to her plans? We won't commit to anything. More interest is good, but besides, you might learn what her angle is on all this. That bird with the hood told me, she drops her voice, that the dove has found some kind of living paradise on the continent. My friends. She places a little too much emphasis on the word, like she's willing it to be true. Will show the society their largesse, if we can get the birds to listen to us. Perhaps she refers to the Dillman Club. Drop a coded hint and her eyes go wide. You know them? Are you one of the Seekers? Ah, that would be telling. She clearly isn't, but craves their approval. We are most definitely a member of the Dillman Club. As the pettifog departs, the delightful dove flutters down from the rafters. Has she been up there the whole time? She cannot be trusted. She would trade our birthright for frivolous fame. It is the first time you have heard the dove speak so plainly. There is a lilting quality to her speech, but every word thrums with indignance. Still, there is some uncertainty in her. Could she be brought round to the fancier's way of thinking? So we have three options. We can affirm her suspicions. The pettifog's desire to use the birds for her own gain represents everything that went wrong between London and pigeons. We can allay her fears. Surely the more who are invested in the well-being of pigeons, the better. The pettifog's interest may be opportunistic, but that may well be advantageous to the pigeons. Or we can defend London at large. We'll grant the pettifog's motivations are suspect, but she does not speak for London, nor the pigeon's place in it. Let's defend London at large. The twig is mightier, oh no. The dove doesn't meet your gaze. Her ever-fruiting twig, as always, is close at beak. She places it on the table by the statute book. This is the future of the pigeon, not, she pecks the leather cover, fighting for their affection. I have seen the sprouting place. That is where we belong. Well, we have a few more options here. We can peddle the pigeon potable. Pigeons are the only bird to produce milk. Perhaps the more culinary adventurous Londons might be convinced of its enlivening properties. Ooh, I'm not sure I like the idea of that. Convince the claymen of their shared struggle. The unremarkable fancier must see something of himself in the pigeon. Could his kin be made to see the same? Or we can pen a panegyric pamphlet, spread the good word of the pigeon, and it can't hurt to include a few salacious details to pad out your illugizing. Let's, little pigeon potable, I guess. Good for the body, good for the soul. Oh, but pay no mind to the chunks. They're the most healthful and nutritious. Your pigeon tonic is a hit, presumably thanks to the healthy lug of wine in every vial. And with every sale comes another prospective member of the society. Let's convince the claymen of their shared struggle too. You speak of bonds of stone and feather, the kinship of the outsider. The pigeons are a cautionary tale for the claymen of what might come to pass when they cease to be useful. The claymen are the pigeons, of what it's like to accept the place society puts you in. The delightful dove watches with interest. Claymen make a poor audience. It's hard to tell if you've got through to them, but several remain as the crowd fragments apart, and the dove picks up where you left off. Oh no, the reasons to leave London are mounting. That doesn't seem good. What did the potable do? Hang on. Pigeons have come to understand the quid pro quo. Good? What does the pamphlet do for me? The pamphlet finds modest success. You included enough lurid detail to see that readers can't resist passing them on. But if they come for the gossip, they stay for your fascinating accounts of the birds. Pigeons might be convinced to stay. Ooh. Okay, well, I guess we should call the meeting, or should I do that in the next episode? Because I feel this episode has gone on long enough, so in the next episode we'll call the meeting. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, let me know what you think. Your comments are greatly appreciated. And as always, I'll see you next time.